Police officers of Reddit, what is your best I think we have the wrong person story? I've got two from 25 years ago when I was a cop. One on one side of the badge and one from the other. The first, I got assigned a warrant service to pick up a wanted felon. Mr. Robertson was 6 feet tall, 250 pounds, long red hair, bushy red beard, and lived at, let's say, 123 Elm Street. A pretty distinctive dude. So I roll up to 123 Elm Street, and sure enough, there he is mowing his lawn in the front yard. Is the man himself. 6 feet tall, 250 pounds, red hair, red beard. I make contact with him and say, "Hey, Mr. Robertson, you got warrants and it's time to go to jail." I hook him up, take him to jail, and in central booking, I get his property off of him while filing out the inventory. I happen to notice this guy's Mr. Robinson, not Robertson. Sure enough, the wanted guy was my guy's landlord and his twin brother from another mother, good doppelganger. When I'd said Robertson, Robinson didn't even think the fact I'd said the name. He just heard the similar sounding name as his own. We had to walk the whole thing back and reactivate the warrant, then kicked him loose with a handshake and an apology. The one from the other side, I had just gotten off duty at 2 a.m., and when driving home still in uniform, there wasn't any other traffic on the road, so I wasn't really surprised when a police car turned in behind me and started following me. I figured he was trolling for drunks, and I was the only thing moving on the road, so he was just gonna follow me a little to observe my driving, and he pretty quickly realized I was sober and peel off. Instead, another patrol car joined him. And another. Then all four lit me up and spread out behind me, blocking the road in a full felony stop. Well, this just got interesting. They went through the whole procedure and I carefully followed their instructions. When they finally got me out and saw my uniform, they just stopped for a few seconds while I was trying to figure out what the heck was going on. Then 3 of the officers got in their cars, turned off their lights, and took off, while the original officer told me I could put my hands down and explained what was going on. My car was a spot-on match for the suspect vehicle in an armed robbery and shooting that had just occurred right up the road. I had driven right by the scene before the cops even got there a few minutes before the officer in the next district spotted me and thought I was the suspect. It was an interesting night. 2 of my colleagues, who were murder squad detectives, attended custody to meet a defendant answering bail. When they arrived at the custody desk, there were a couple of people hanging around waiting for their solicitors. They told the custody sergeant they were there for insert name, and he pointed one of the guys out. They went up and introduced themselves, and they said they'd be questioning him at another station, so all 3 got in the car and headed off. While driving, they told the defendant what would be happening. On arrival, he would be arrested on suspicion of attempted murder, questioned, and either bailed or remanded. The guy's like, "You gotta be joking, attempted murder, I was shoplifting." He was relatively calm, half laughing and shaking his head. A short time later, one of the officers got a call from the custody sergeant. Their actual bail appointment had arrived. There were 2 defendants with the same name answering the bail that day. They apologized to the non-murderous shoplifter, turned the car around, and headed back to the right person for questioning. Keystone Cops to the max. In our family, we had a great uncle who tattooed his name and social security number to his shoulder. Apparently he had the same name as birthday as another guy with a prison record, and kept hearing about it. It had come in handy at least twice when he was pulled over, and the cops started arresting him. Each time he got out because he had his social security as proof that he was innocent. Not a cop, but the wrong person in question. There's another man 2 years younger than me who shares my first and last name, except same spelling. The only difference is my middle name. The police were investigating a county trustee who was giving people housing assistance checks they didn't qualify for. They would cash the assistance and give the trustee a percentage back. One of the civilians were being investigated was the other guy. A plainclothes cop in an unmarked car shows up with a female holding a clipboard. identifies himself as a state trooper, and within 5 minutes is asking me for copies of my bank records. He's threatening to subpoena if I don't comply. This is the first time I've been mistaken for him. I used to get his mail all the time, and I even asked if they were looking for the other guy, pointing at our different middle names. I got suspicious real fast. A high-pressure situation, demanding access to my financial records, threats of subpoenas, and further legal action. So I started to doubt if it was an actual police officer, and in fact just a scammer. The badge he showed me was just a plastic square like my driver's license, further muddying the issue. I told him I wanted to speak with the police and called dispatch. 2 uniformed officers showed up 15 minutes later and confirmed this guy was an officer. The woman with him was some kind of auditor and the records keeper. After a further 15 minutes of questions, the woman pulled the guy away and pointed out something on the phone. Yep, they wanted the other guy. Remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment with what subreddits you want me to cover next. I live in a small town in rural England, and we used to get some trainees, new police officers from the meet there for their training. Me and some of my friends were teenagers. We were walking to the supermarket, because what else is there to do in small town pre-internet? Suddenly, from out of nowhere, this police car comes screaming in out of nowhere, sirens going on and screeching to a halt in front of us. A young guy, must have been only 5 years or older than us, jumps out of the car and starts giving us the whole hairdryer treatment. He lines us up and starts taking our statements of what we've been up to in the last hour, and gloating at us.
You lads are in trouble now. Criminal damage, trespass, theft. You've really screwed up.
With him was the local Bobby, and he came up to each of us in turn, after the younger guy had grilled us, and said very jovially, "Now, don't worry, lads. I'm sure it's a misunderstanding. We've had some reports of a break-in. You don't match the preliminary description, and I'm sure we'll get this cleared up when we get the more detailed description come through." So the more detailed description comes through the radio, and the young guy's wearing the biggest shit-eating grin you've ever seen. The description didn't even remotely match, and honestly, the young guy looked so disappointed we all ended up feeling sorry for him. So yeah, that was probably very embarrassing for him. Not an officer, but I live in a neighborhood in Indy that is going through a major revitalization right now, so it's pretty much in a transitional phase. We rent a house from a good friend of ours. He bought the house from some garbage people who had lived there for a long time. These people did, sold, and made drugs. There was violence, prostitution, everything under the sun. In general, the house was disgusting, unlivable, and really just the worst. Well, the scumbags who lived here still try to use our address after 5 years. About a year and a half ago, one of the dudes used our address to renew his driver's license at the BMV. He even had the audacity to leave a note for us to call him when the license came in. Fast forward a few months around Christmas time, we're all sitting around watching TV when we all get a knock on the door. My husband answers, and it's a SWAT team with guns drawn. They see my husband, who does not look like a methed-out crackhead, and inside are our 2 little boys, my parents and me nursing the baby, plus the Christmas tree and all the lovely trappings of our home. They immediately put their guns down, and my husband and I have a lovely chat with him. Yeah, they had our house surrounded, guns drawn, the whole shebang, looking for this dude who was wanted on some kind of violent felony. We were pissed at this dude, who I shall refer to from here on out as Big Nasty. A Missouri man spent nearly 17 years behind bars for robbery until his doppelganger was discovered, and the other guy looked so much like him, the authorities decided to toss out his conviction. Jones, 41, had been serving a 19-year jail sentence for a 1999 robbery when he heard of other inmates buzzing that another prisoner looked just like him, and even shared his first name, Starr said. It's unclear what the other man was locked up for, and Jones never saw his doppelganger, but he's told 2 legal interns assigned to his case about the rumors, according to Alice Craig, one of Jones' lawyers. The interns brought the message back to their superior at the Midwest Innocence Project and the Paul E. Wilson Defender Project, who dug further into the case. It turned out that not only did the other man bear an uncanny resemblance to Joan, He also lived closer to the site of the crime. Jones's doppelganger, Ricky Amos, used to live in with his mother in Kansas City, Kansas, near the address of the incident, Craig said. Lived across the state in Kansas City, M.O. When I saw that picture, it made sense to me, said Jones, who has denied committing the robbery to the Star. Either you're gonna think we're the same person, or you're gonna be like, man, these guys, they look so much alike. His lawyers showed the two men's photo to the victim, two witnesses, and the prosecutor in Jones's case. All four admitted they could not tell the pair apart, according to Starr. The most frustrating thing about this whole thing is that there was a GoFundMe page set up to help Jones and his freedom. I mean, for frick's sake, just give the guy some money. Interestingly, this is one of the reasons we have fingerprinting, all because of two guys, Will West and William West, who not only had the same name but also looked alike. They were both sentenced to jail at Leavenworth Penitentiary in Kansas over 100 years ago. The arrival of Will West in 1903 caused the records clerk at the prison considerable confusion because he was convinced he'd processed him 2 years previously. I'm not a cop, but my mom has a story for this happening to her. Basically, it revolves around the show America's Most Wanted. A woman who looked almost exactly like my mom was featured on the show. She had the same hair, same face, and the kicker, same name. They even showed my mom's actual information, which I won't list here as being the criminals. The story ended like every show on that does. If you have any information regarding the whereabouts of this dangerous criminal, please call this number. Now on to my mom's perspective. She was sitting at home on a Saturday night, alone as she lived alone. She was reading a Stephen King book when she hears some commotion coming from the hallway. She ignores it, there's lots of yelling. She had not seen the show, which painted her as a criminal. And then suddenly, bam! Her door is knocked down in an instant. About 10 cops flood into her one-bedroom apartment and she's arrested. She explained they had the wrong person. They claimed everything matched. Social Security matched, DNA matched, name matched, photo resemblance matched. It turns out the woman was basically stealing my mom's identity and intentionally making herself look like my mom. The end result is, when they created a profile for the criminal, they used my mom's information to start with. So when they arrested my mom, of course the information matched. It was her information originally. They kept her in jail for 2 weeks. It wasn't until they took her fingerprints from the scene of the crime they said she committed and her prints didn't match that they realized she wasn't the criminal. It's scary to think if they had used her profile prints rather than crime scene prints as the set to compare to, that she would have still been in jail today. It was basically a life sentence. Since everyone else isn't a cop, I was 16 and worked at a golf course mowing lawns and such. We got a call from home from the cops that said I'm a suspect in a hit-and-run accident because my plate numbers were on the car that drove away without stopping. The cops said the car was maroon-colored. My car was gray. We told them and figured that was that. The next day at work, there was a minor accident. A dumbass coworker pulled a metal rake too hard, and the rack holding it came down onto my forehead. It wasn't a deep wound, but it bled a lot. My boss took me to the ER to get my head superglued, and to be safe, took me home too. Thus, my car stayed at the golf course. That evening, a cop comes by and finds me with a head wound, and my car is missing. I look quite guilty. By sheer luck, the cop calls someone, after talking to my parents, and discovers they got the guy, and the plate numbers were close, not the same. I probably would have been arrested. Thank you for watching today's video. If you enjoyed, remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment with what subreddit you want me to cover next. Bye bye.